Ladies and gentlemen, ODL 3 is here. And we've got 14 teams this time around, and I have decided to take a crack at finally ranking them for myself this time instead of just listening to whatever the heck Papa says. So, without any further ado, let's just get into the only tier list you're ever going to have to look at for this league. We start off at the bottom with Bob Roomba and the Washington Pokemon team. So, he went for the Rain Core, but he got sniped out of Pelipper very early on by the other Rain team, so kind of a skill issue on his part. So now he just has a worse Rain team, which people will have answers for all the time. Archulodon is definitely bait. It's certainly not worth 16. I don't care if its special move is better in Rain. It does not help it in the slightest. And also, you did such a bad job of drafting, you almost didn't get a Rain setter. Like, my guy, you messed up the most important part of a Rain team, which is having Rain. Fortunately, you got bailed out, but still, this is probably the single worst draft I've ever seen until free agency happened. Next up, we have Roku from the Denver Diglets. Really, Beedrill Mega just kind of doesn't do much. It's like fast, but it will die to rocks over and over, which means Corviknight has to come, even though Corviknight's slightly fallen off this gen. You've got, let's see. Also, your hazard game is just weak as far as setting stuff up. You've got Mamoswine, who doesn't want to do that over and over through a game. It would rather do like attacking stuff than whatever the heck hazard set you're gonna have to run in order to get rocks. And also, you don't have like a clear number one Pokemon that you're gonna be trying to feed stuff through, which can be helpful if you are able to set up multiple threats in a game, but good luck with that with this team. Because like you have Iron Boulder and Raging Bolt, and like that's really it. And, like a good Steel type just kind of sits on them both. So then you don't really have any way to break through a Steel type besides bringing Magmortar to the party, which is not ideal. 12th is Rosero with the Minnesota Mudkips. Chien-Pao is great outside of draft, like on a standard ladder, because it's just so fast. But if everybody knows it's coming, then it will die to every priority ever. And also it's rock weak, so you can't always just rely on a focus sash to get yourself out of that. I think my biggest issue with this team is Tapu Fini and Dragapult literally work against each other. Tapu Fini's fairy terrain literally weakens Dragapult's Dragon Stab. Like, the synergy is just so backwards, it doesn't even make sense. Cradily doesn't particularly serve a purpose. Electivire is just bad as a whole. I don't care if it got that new physical electric move. That new electric move isn't going to save it. And the hazard game is just bad. Like, you see what I've said on there. It's like Arcanine or Crustle or Claydol. And like, Arcanine doesn't necessarily want to run rocks most of the time because it kind of wants to be a breaker, which it would want banned for. And then Claydol and Crustle would require you to actually bring one of them to a fight, which is not the optimal decision in almost any circumstance. 11th is Hoobi, and I think my biggest issue with this team is that he didn't get Raging Bolt, so like what's the point of this team even existing? Like, yeah, sure, it's a Sun team, but like he didn't get the cool legendary dogs, ancient legendary dogs. Are they even dogs? Some of them aren't even dogs, but besides the point. It's like the best Sun team we've ever had, but at the same time, a lot of stuff benefits from Sun nowadays with Paradox Mons. And so you've got a lot of teams who will have their own Pokemon try to take advantage of your weather terrain, which is not particularly great. Also, Metagross doesn't particularly enjoy the sun, but you need a steel type anyway, so I can forgive that. Also, hazards are just bad because it relies on either Metagross or Venusaur, and I feel like if you're running Venusaur on a sun team, you're not using it because it can set up hazards, you're using it because it is a chlorophyll sweeper and provides a fast win con for this team. In 10th, we've got Frostfur and the Graceful Glaceons. Mega Blastoise always has that potential to just end games instantly if the right hole is opened up, but it requires getting rid of every single source of priority that the opposing team has, which means it's not going to be consistent all the time. I love the Ogerpon Hearthflame pick to complement it. Creates a rather weird Firewater Grass core between just two mons, but it's also can't hold a Scarf, so it does have 110 speed, so it'll outspeed most non-Scarfers, but if something has a Scarf, it will outrun it, and it would have to use up a turn clicking Trailblaze in order to counteract that. I like the Webs edition for Araquanid, because it basically means Ogerpon can afford to run a fourth move instead of Trailblaze. So it could run a Leech Seed or some sort of supporting move in that fourth slot instead of having to run Trailblaze to try to set itself up. Overall, I think it's a decent team, but we've got a lot of really good teams this season. As is the case with Nat Deck's draft, there's a lot of stupid good mons out there that people can go for. Next up, we have Winter with the Raikus. It's kind of weird because Iron Bundle is in and of itself an amazing mon. I'm glad that Winter finally has it because he has been wanting this thing for 7 years at this point. But it also means that you need really good hazard control, and your hazard control, at least as far as your top tier mons, is going to be Great Tusk running Rapid Spin and Scizor Mega running Defog. And Scizor Mega doesn't really want to run Defog normally because it wants to run Swords Dance Bullet Punch and just run through everything like that. Great Tusk is pretty good at hazard control, but it also limits its creativity as far as other sets. Let's see. Samurot's hazard stacking abilities are great, but you can miss the hazard stacking move, which is, kind of weird. Also, this team only has one Pokemon that really loves taking Earthquakes, and that's Articuno, who's immune to it. There's no resistances. There's a couple of weaknesses along the lower tiers. So, Earthquake spam against this team will go really hard. And also, it's a good thing he got the Snow, because otherwise I would suspect he's been replaced by an imposter. Next up, we have my team, who is sort of halfway through. I think the biggest issue with this team is that there's the 6 mons at the front, and then that's it. The other 5 are just there because you have to draft 11 Pokemon. Latios got a bunch of new options. The trade from Iron Moth to Ogerpon Wellspring was probably one of the best trades of the season. But it's also kind of weird because, there's technically a Firewater Grass core, but Skeletor isn't going to be a fire type more often than not, and Ogerpon doesn't provide enough defensive utility for the water type or grass type. Gliscor as the hazard stacker is nasty, especially with King Gambit being able to potentially punish defog attempts with Defiant if you're choosing not to run Supreme Overlord. Skeletor with Terra is nasty. It's arguably an Uber's level Pokemon that's just available there for 12 points. I don't know what the tiering was there. But yeah, there's, basically which 6 mons are coming unless you hard counter one of those 6, and then you have to start preparing for one of the other ones. Mega Banette is weird because Winter made it look really good that one season, but then everybody else who has ever used it cannot make it work in the slightest. So it'll be interesting to see if I can make it work, if I ever choose to bring it, because let's face it, there's 6 really good mons at the top. There's a lot of win cons, but also those win cons can be prepared for, if you think about it, even though Iron Valley has a lot of variety in how it can win. Number 7 is Snarfy with the Virginia Vicavolts. Sneether Tapu Lele is neat, because Psychic Terrain preventing priority means that Unburdened Sneasler goes insanely hard and has almost no counterplay, unless there's like a rival Unburdened Pokemon that's even faster. But it also boosts Psychic-type moves, which means that even if you don't have a great Psychic-type attacker, like special attacker, you can just slap a Psychic-type move on there and it'll probably KO it. Ursaluna, as always, I think it's a trap. It's both forms, not just Blood Moon, but like Blood Moon's obviously the relevant one here. Blood Moon does a lot of damage, but it's also way too slow, and when people know it's coming, it can be easy enough to slap a move onto basically every offensive mon that it wants to like try to switch into and set up on. So it certainly can open up a hole if you position it right, but it's harder to position in draft when people know it's probably going to be coming. Rotom-Wash, Venusaur, and Umbreon are nasty as a defensive trio. Salamence is kinda... I don't even know if Salamence comes most games, because you don't really have a steal for the Dragon Fairy Steel Core except for Togedemaru, which, like, if you're bringing Togedemaru, what the heck went wrong? And also, Cacturne and Kricketune kind of do nothing here. Like, Kricketune is... it has webs, and it is somehow still 1 point. That is just how bad it is. And then Cacturne just doesn't even have any sort of feature that is redeemable, for the most part. So, you've really got, like, 8 Pokemon to prep for, and that's really it. Alright, Comgoat with the Unwavering Umbreons. Urshifu, Single Strike, is nasty, because you can just kind of work around Protect. It has Swords Dance, it can run a Choice Band. It doesn't require a ton of holes to break through a team. And it also resists Sucker Punch, like Quad Resist Sucker Punch, which means that the most common priority option will not be an effective counterplay to it. It does die to like any sort of fairy move though, so you just got to be careful about that. Tapu Koko is weird for this team because like it really only has a ton of synergy with Unburdened Sceptile and Iron Crown, but like there's a lot of other Paradox Mons that will benefit from the electric terrain more than this team will, because Iron Crown is not a particularly exceptional Paradox Pokemon, and Sceptile is a Sceptile. And then hazards for this team, Donphan is doing a lot of lifting. Like, it almost has to come every game. As a spinner, I think Garchomp providing rocks for it is rocks and spikes is probably going to be how this has to go, but at the same time, you're bringing 2 ground types then. And it also means you're probably leaving behind something like Heatran, because you don't want to lose your only flying type and your only earthquake resist out of your top bunch in Gyarados. So you've got... It's interesting team comp. You just gotta figure out how to keep the hazards on and off, because Donphan's gonna basically have to come every week in order to prevent hazards from sticking around. Also, yeah, you drafted Poliwag, man. Like, the budgeting was horrible. Number 5, we have Arctic Money, the Vermilion City Thunder. This is the rain team that Bob Roomba wishes he had. He got Floatzel after the draft, which is like almost a huge throw, because why on earth would you have Floatzel in there instead of... Why on earth would you have Barraskewda instead of Floatzel is beyond me. Enamorous can't Terra, so it's not quite as effective as it usually is. Iron Treads is decently fast for a Steel type, so this team somehow has speed at all times. Tangrowth is kind of mixed on range because it can't use Synthesis, but it has a lot of other healing, so I think overall it's a net positive for Tangrowth. And then Spiritomb and Luxray are just kind of useless on this squad. Like, you're clearly building this team around Pelipper Rain, because you got Zapdos, Floatzel, Swampert Mega, Tangrowth. Noivern and Ludicolo can also benefit. Iron Treads is just a good mon to have in general. Enamorous can come. So yeah, those last two are probably mostly irrelevant, and like Luxray is like almost certainly not worth 3 points at all. Like, I just do not see Luxray ever coming. Next up we have Catbug with the Sydney Snorlax. Terrapagos is going to be interesting to see how it works, because it's like the one new Pokemon that like everybody knows is really good, but we don't know how good it is in draft yet. It can't Terra, which is a good thing because the Terra form would be banned, but it also gets a free turn to set up by turning every single move it faces into not very effective on the first turn, or at full HP. So it also gets a lot of coverage, like stupid amounts of coverage. If you look at its move pool, it is very deep, and honestly, it could be a nightmare to deal with. Goldengo is like a good mon, but like your hazards are Meowscarada setting spikes, which it can run. It doesn't oftentimes want to run it, but it can. Weezing with toxic spikes, which honestly could be a good bring because Weezing is just surprisingly good defensively. And then you have Shuckle, the Fuckle, who is probably the best hazard stacker on the team, but like it's useless outside of that role, and it will only do it once, so you basically have to get really good at using Goldengo to prevent people from removing hazards in order for Shuckle to have a lasting impact on a game. Laios Mega is weird because it's kind of... it's like obviously a great mon, it's got stupid high stats, but like it can't hold an item to like boost its damage, so sometimes it'll just miss the specs, or sometimes it won't have the speed for that a Scarf Latios would. This is also the only team that won it with 2 20-pointers, so it'll be interesting to see how that works out, because like this is clearly another top-heavy team. Although Swampert and Moltres are very good, it's gonna be hard because like Ninetales also wants to come just to set up screens for stuff, which make everything even more unkillable, which could make this team very annoying in the long run. The Belgian Red Darmanitans, Mr. Papa. Kyurem is basically just Baxcalibur again. It's faster, but it's also very much weaker on the physical side. So it's also got a bit less bulk, I think. I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head. Either way, it's a decent enough first pick. Superior, Terra Superior, how did we let this happen? Like, it's just a really good mon. There's... Dondozo fixes up that third point on the screen, the lack of physical walls. Like, Dondozo is probably the perfect physical wall for this team. I think the problem is that you're going to be wanting to bring, like, Empoleon and Dondozo to almost every matchup, because Empoleon is your best source of hazard removal. Like, Hatterene prevents hazards from going up, but you have to play very prediction heavy to make that happen. Cinccino is really good for being a 5-point mod. It gets Tidy Up now, so that's hazard control plus a setup opportunity rolled into one. It just means that Cinccino has to find a way to live a turn, which depending on the Pokemon that's out, you can find those turns. Also, Darkrai is... nobody knows what it is. Like, it's a Darkrai, so like, you can't count it out, but it still doesn't feel like a 20-point Pokemon. It's like, it's either going to be one of the worst 20-point Pokemon of all time, or it's going to be one of the worst 20-point Pokemon of all time, and Papa will make us regret letting him have it. Overall, this is a very scary team. It's just going to have to rely a lot on Empoleon keeping hazards off for most of its threats, like Pinsir Mega and Kuro especially. Because Pinsir can't run boots, and is quad weak to rocks. So if you can't keep rocks off the field, it will die upon 2 switch-ins. So you have to play Defog Empoleon, which, like, it's a good defogger. It's just, it's going to have to be the defogger, which means everybody's going to know what's coming and play around it. But Papa's a good coach. He'll be able to make everybody look foolish, as always. We have Downtown next, at number 2. Chi-Yu as, like, just a straight-up nuke. It doesn't even have to be the win con for this team, because Palafin is right there. Palafin serves as, like, a decent enough win con. So Chi-Yu can focus on just, like, Choice Specs Overheat and just obliterating a certain target. Let's see. Beyond those two, Skarmory setting up spikes is pretty good. Rabombi can set up webs, also really good. Rabombi's like top 10 usage in Ubers, so like I don't know what the fuck we're doing here with this tiering system. Also 4 water types. 4 fucking water types. Like, a little bit of type diversity would have helped with those last picks. Like, there is no world where you bring Wailord over Vaporeon. There's probably no world where you bring Poliwrath over Palafin, because I think they both have the same typing as well. So, those bottom 2 Pokemon are just worse than the Pokemon that you have that you would be bringing to most matches. And with that, we have one last team, and that team is Steve with the Utah Treacherous Excadrills. It's basically everything a Sand team wants. Like, you got Tyranitar. Maybe you could argue that Hippowdon is the better Sand setter, but Tyranitar provides a fair bit of offense, and also doesn't mean that you double stack on ground types with Excadrill. Dracovish, Excadrill, Houndstone, classic Sand abusers, basically everything the Sand team kind of wants. Cresselia as a Terra is nasty. I see he's taking Terra Poison, which is a filthy Terra type for a Levitate Pokemon, especially with Cresselia's bulk and ability to actually heal itself. Roserade as, like, the Spike setter is nice, and then between Spikes and Sand, you will wear down opponents super easily. So it won't take a ton of work to potentially break through a certain wall, especially because you have a lot of physical attackers. So it's going to put your opponent's physical walls under a lot of stress every game. Let's see, what else? I think the biggest issue with this team is that Tyranitar can't come in repeatedly. It has a crippling weakness to fighting, so it's kind of a worse weather setter in that it can't do it over and over, but if it gets the one time right, it can just win the game on the spot with this team. Landorus Incarnate is very nasty. I don't think there's even a wasted spot on this team. Like, the closest thing I can see is like Dachshund. I don't even know if I can pronounce that even close to right. I think the only other weakness is that hazard removal is not great. Like, you got Excadrill Rapid Spin, but if Excadrill's running a Sand Rush set, it doesn't want to run Rapid Spin since it has speed. And your other option is Landorus Defog, which is... You want Sheer Force Life Orb shenanigans on that thing more than anything else. But overall, this is still, like, the best team, I think. It's just, it committed to a bit super hard, but it knows what it has to do every single week. There is 3 win cons, but they all operate through, like, the same idea in Dracovish, Excadrill, Houndstone. Landorus is also a win con, but probably going to be used more as, like, just a general mid-game breaker. And basically it's going to be about if a team can stand up to 3 physical attackers coming at them, which not a lot of teams are able to. I don't think there's a physical wall in the game that can handle those, especially one that could potentially cover all of the different types. And then you've got Stoutland in there at the bottom, which it is very nasty as a sand Pokemon. It also can have Intimidate, so that's funky. But yeah, anyways, Steve is going to win this league by a landslide. He's probably not going to drop a game. He may not even have a single close game. I think the closest he's going to get is like 4-0 probably. Like, this guy is going to absolutely clear everybody. Wait, what's that message in the bottom right? This entire ranking was randomly generated on Saturday? Oh, so everything I said was just a joke. Ah, shit.